این بانگ آزادیست که از خاوران خیزد، فریاد انسان هاست که از نای جان خیزد، اعلام طوفان هاست که از هر کران خیزد، آتش فشان قهر ملت های در بندد.
Good evening. Good evening and welcome very, very much to Conversations, where we're pleased and honored this evening to welcome to the program Dr. Rajaie Khorassani, Saeed Rajaie Khorassani, who is the Ambassador and Permanent Representative to the United Nations from the Islamic Republic of Iran. And Dr. Rajaie, welcome very, very much to Conversations.
Thank you.
Indeed. I wonder if you might, for myself, we're in a time, a volatile time now in the contemporary political situation in a world sense and so forth, but I wonder if you might share a little bit with myself and with the cable television audience the historical development of the nation of Iran or Persia. It goes back, the roots go back to the Persian culture. They go back very, very far into ancient antiquity. I wonder if maybe you could, in a thumbnail kind of way, share with us the developments of the culture that was to emerge in the modern sense, in the modern sense of Iran. It's a very old and well-established culture.
That is very true. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. The so-called Iranian culture is a very old and a very rich culture because, first of all, it covers a very important part of the Islamic culture as well. It has two distinctive parts. One is the pre-Islamic and the other one is the post-Islamic. The pre-Islamic culture is important, but it is not particularly rich when compared to the post-Islamic culture. In the post-Islamic culture, there are very important changes in the socio-political and cultural environment of the country, freedom, and also opportunity for independent thinking, for theological thinking, philosophical thinking, for art, for poetry, for all sorts of cultural manifestations prevailed much better.
Yes.
In the pre-Islamic period, of which I personally at least do not know so much as I know about the post-Islamic.
Yes, right.
What we hear is about the dynasties and the more or less, let's say, political, the rough political structure of the country and how the government was transferred from one dynasty to another, or from one ruler to another, one monarch to another. The life of a typical Iranian man is sometimes not clearly known to us. We think that in those days the rest of the world has not been any better anyway. We had a country with a system of government, and a good number of people, relatively speaking, were educated before Islam even, and the popular religion in the country was Zoroastrianism.
That's right.
And Zoroastrianism required a good number of the, let's say, religious scholars to be learned, to be literate, and to be quite aware and familiar with the religious norms, values, morals of that system, whatever they were. And they had also a sort of predominance over the whole life of the Iranian people.
Yeah, and it was the beginning of a monotheistic view, a religious monotheistic view of the world that was, in a sense, precursor to the Judaic, Christian, Islamic tradition.
That is correct.
The people of the book, in a sense.
That is correct.
Did tie their beginnings to Zoroastrianism, which is very, very ancient.
It is very ancient. I think it is not as ancient as Judaism, but it is more ancient than Christianity.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the culture in Persia, there was a rich culture that
was very rich, but very simple. We are talking of 2,000 years ago.
Yes, right.
And we shouldn't think of Star Wars or helicopters or airplanes.
Not at all. No.
They had methods of agriculture.
Sure.
They had methods of irrigation, for instance.
Right.
This tradition of digging canals, which is very efficient.
Yes.
And very feasible and very appropriate to the geographical and climatical conditions of Iran, goes back to those days.
Yes, that's right. Way back to the ancient days when the civilization developed. Europe was in barbarism for long, when there was civilizations developing there. And it's a unique culture. The Persian culture.
It is unique.
It's not Arabic, and first maybe we could share the relation. It's a unique culture. The language is
it is
Farsi.
unique.
It's an Indo-European language.
That is
it's
correct.
A unique language. And
yes. the language is Farsi, which is translated to English as Persian, and sometimes people think that the name of Iran was in the past Persian, and then we changed it to Iran, which is not correct.
That's right.
Persian has always been the name of the language with which in the Western literature the country was sometimes identified.
I see.
And Iran has always been the name of the country. The Persian language, as you know very well, comes from Sanskrit, and it is one of the Indo-European languages.
Yeah.
A family which is totally different from the Semitic languages, which covers Arabic, Hebrew, and Soriani, and the rest of them.
Yeah, I think it's really the core of the Indo-European language. It's a cultural core area,
Exactly.
that area of the world, and it's one that's good for us to keep that in mind, that it is that. It has a rich tradition that goes way back, and it is tied in linguistically to the European tradition.
That is correct. I think European languages like English, German, Spanish, French, Italian, even Latin and Greek, they all descendants of the same family.
That's right.
They come from Sanskrit, and there are plenty of common words in them. The word brother, sister, father, mother.
And there was a rich dynasty history with Darius and so forth that went back to the time of Macedonian prince Alexander and so forth. So there's a rich tradition that's part of the Persian tradition and culture that, in a certain sense, gives a distinct quality in terms of a nation apart from, let's say, the rest of the Arabic world. Do you think it stands out?
Well,
and
it
what
is
the
an
relationship
independent.
between-
It is, I think, a unique, let's say, cultural situation, different from the Arabic culture.
Yeah.
It is, to some extent, different from the Indian culture, even. But with the subcontinent, we have a lot in common with Pakistan, with Afghanistan, with India. Not only geographically, but linguistically, as well as culturally. With the Arabs also, we have always been neighbors.
Yes.
And we have had a lot of exchange in the Arabic literature. There are plenty of, let's say, signs of influence or verses even, verses of poetry about the Persian monarchs. And there are also great number of Iranian poets who have produced excellent verses of Arabic poetry. You know, we have great writers who wrote in Arabic, but they also wrote in Persian. They were Persian writers who wrote Arabic. We have this sort of exchange of culture between neighboring cultures is something very common.
Yeah, it's very much of a bridge culture. I mean, you're right, because it's between the East and the West in a very real sense, in both secular and in sacred terms, in a very real sense. It's a bridge and core area for us to well understand the historical roots that go to that particular part of the world that you represent.
And the second part, which is the Islamic part, is already 1,400 years old.
Yes, right.
And when Islam entered the country, it just spread very, very quickly because the people received it, full-heartedly with appreciation. And in a very short period of time, it became a very important part of the Islamic empire of the time. Great number of Muslim scholars immediately researched, because education had its own restrictions in pre-Islamic period.
Yes.
But after Islamic history, after the let's say after the epoch of the change to Islam, then and because of the encouragement that Islam has for education and learning, then a great number of scholars appeared and writing about different subjects in different fields became a sign of prestige.
Yes.
And that's why in a very short period then we see great number of Muslim scholars, philosophers, theologians, logicians, poets, even painters, different fields appeared from Iran.
Yeah.
And they have contributed to all fields of Islamic knowledge.
Oh yeah, there's no question. Following what, 600 in the Christian era, 600 AD, 700 AD, after the coming of Muhammad and so forth, that was the cultural core area of the world. And
exactly.
That part of the world where, again, Europe was in a barbarism.
At that time,
or was in a dark
particularly in the first century of the spread of Islam, we then do not have independent, separate segments or sections like Iran or Iraq or Arabia or Egypt. We have one comprehensive umbrella
Yeah.
called Islam, which covers the whole area, and all these areas were just parts of one ummah, so to speak, one nation, Islamic nation. And gradually, particularly in the Abbasid period, gradually different parts of the Islamic civilization or the Islamic country of the time separated for certain internal political conflicts, and Egypt, Iran, and you know that the Islamic empire of the time was very vast. It covered from Spain to borders of China.
Absolutely, yeah.
And
absolutely.
So each part of it established their own independent government, let's say. And gradually Iran of the time became separate from the center, which was Baghdad. Simply because, at least to our understanding of history, the central government of the time in Baghdad was not really representative of the norms of Islam, because all the cultural, let's say, fragments which came together under the umbrella of Islam, they were happy with Islam. And as soon as the central government started deviating from the mainstream of Islam, and the material life was more or less very predominant in the court of Abbasid. You have heard of the stories of 1001 nights, and the pleasures and the lavish way of life they had. So gradually, various parts of the Islamic society decided that they did not want to contribute to such an Islamic, so-called Islamic central government, and if they are interested in Islam, then they will follow Islam without any political commitment to, let's say, unsatisfactory political system in the center.
There are political developments on the basis of the Islamic culture or the Islamic influence that stretched all the way from Indonesia and China to Spain, as you say. A great deal of different, but there was a basic underlying unity in the Islamic
that is very true.
Tradition and the Islamic, the basic sense of surrender to Allah and the basic view that has grown now to where in the modern era we have close to, did you say, close to 1 billion people that are adherents of the Islam? Almost, right?
Yes.
Making it one of the really
million.
Most, in a broad sense, one of the most broadly adhered to religious faiths here on the face of the earth.
That is correct.
Right? And it comes out of the Western Judaic monotheistic tradition of a religious background, do you think?
I think
they're
all
of
these,
the book. The people
no, all these monotheistic religions come from one source, and that is God. So they are all divine religions. Islam is the last monotheistic religion, and the Prophet of Islam is the last prophet. It is, so far as the religious sources. And we believe that after the Prophet of Islam, no divine prophet can claim can claim prophecy. I mean,
after Muhammad,
the chain has come to an end.
With Muhammad.
With Muhammad, may peace be upon him.
Yeah, okay, and it's fine that he emerged, and then it's also, if you could share with myself and with the cable audience, there's a distinct group, the Shiite, which is very, very important, as I understand, in Iran, and very important in that. And,
well, we have,
and the Sunni, there's a division.
We have Sunnis also in Iran.
Maybe you could share what the difference is between those groups of those who adhere to Islam.
You see, there is a kind of preoccupation in the West, which comes from the Western understanding of their own religious structure. In the West, you have two almost different, two almost independent poles in Christianity. The Catholic pole, Catholicism, and Protestantism.
That's true.
And to some extent, they are polarized. And there are important differences between them which make them sometimes opposing each other.
Even though they're all Christians.
Even they are Christians.
Yeah.
Now, in Islam, we do not have this sectarian perspective at all. And if it is represented in the Western literature as such, it is because the one who exposed the idea to the Western audience himself was a Christian, and he was preoccupied with the sectarian divisions in Christianity.
We overly see it that way.
I think
here.
yes. Right. I think if you wanted to study the case objectively, you should have. I think you would have been more accurate to say that they are schools of jurisprudence, schools of law in Islam. And the divisions are in terms of the legalistic interpretations in minor issues. The book is the same, the Prophet is the same, the prophetic tradition is the same, and the basic tenets are exactly the same. We pray in the same manner, we fast in the same manner, we have the same book, and we have the same Islamic tradition. We quote their transmitters, they quote our transmitters. We have a good number of scholars who have left behind important Quranic interpretations, and we refer to all these interpretations equally, and the reservations on the part of these schools of law are in very, very minor things, which do not really have any significance in terms of dividing the Islamic society.
Not anything nearly as much as our Protestant Catholic division, for instance, in Sufism.
But the divisions have been always flared up and overemphasized, particularly in the West, and more particularly after the revolution. You know that before the revolution
in Iran now,
before the revolution, nobody was worried about the fact that the Shah of Iran was the Shah of a Shiite country. But now the government of Iran is a Shiite government.
I know, right.
This difference is, I think, more intensified and intensified by the Western media, particularly because of its political ramifications. They are interested in, more divisions in the region rather than in more unity.
Yeah, the Shiite actually comes from the Ali, or it's the
Shiites.
The son.
The Shiites have a school of fiqh, a school of jurisprudence, which follows the prophetic family, so to speak. And the school of fiqh among ourselves is among the Muslims. It is called Ja'fari. The founder of this school of fiqh is Ja'far ibn Muhammad al-Sadiq, who is a descendant of the Prophet. Also, we believe that after the Prophet, the caliphate should have gone with Ali ibn Abi Talib,
his son-in-law.
The son-in-law. But our Sunni brothers believe that it went with Abu Bakr, and they just go along with the caliphs. But they do too believe that Ali ibn Abi Talib is one of the caliphs, because he was the fourth caliph. So it is a very minor historical explanation, which does not touch very much the daily lives of the Muslims nowadays. The daily lives of the Muslims are based on their understanding, their interpretation, and their access to the whole bulk of Islamic tradition, which covers the Prophet's tradition, prophetic tradition, the way he lived, the way he exercised Islam, and the way he explained various religious or theological or political problems
and ways of life,
to his companions. So these traditions are very, very important. They set a very important part of the legal source for the Muslims. We have first the Quran, and then the prophetic tradition, and then other sources, which are more or less common.
Yeah, it's interesting because you have this, again, from Indonesia.
Yes.
The influence is there, to Morocco, the influence is there, and so forth. But there are differences, of course, national differences and differences within
national differences
that pan-Islamic sense. There are differences, obviously, that emerge.
Yes, the national differences, I think, are more or less due to the infiltration of the concept of nation-state.
Yeah,
which is later on,
Right, that comes in later in terms of the historical development of it.
From 18th century onward. Before that, we don't have it.
Yeah, I wonder if we come back to that again. In the Judaic tradition, the Judaic-Christian tradition, we have the concept, in the Judaic tradition, we have the concept of a future prophetic, or a future prophecy of the coming of a Messiah, an age of liberation, an age of qualitative transformation. There's a great deal within some fundamentalist Christian views of the second coming of Jesus in these particular times in which we find ourselves. Is there a sense within the Islamic tradition of a coming from a future coming that would be perhaps in the days we find ourselves, of a coming liberation or of a qualitative transformation or day of judgment or something comparable to the Messiah in the Judaic tradition?
The day of judgment is a day which every individual is going to face. It is in the hereafter. It is a part of the so to speak, it's the opinion in the life hereafter. So that the day of judgment is there. But there is this concept of expectation. We are expecting one of the descendants of the Prophet who will come back, and more or less, as you mentioned, other religions also have the same concept of expectation.
There's something I read something, the 12th
It is
Imam.
the 12th Imam. Imam means leader.
Yeah.
L-E-A-D-E-R. Literally, it means leader. And the concept of Imam, or the spiritual leader, or the leader of the society, in Islam is a very important concept. The 12th Imam is the 12th descendant of the Prophet's family, whom we expect his resurgence, his coming back to our society, and to ultimately purify all of us.
To ultimately purify all of us, in the final days, the final days of judgment, or something.
It's not the final. It might be tomorrow. We don't know when.
Well, I was just wondering whether or not there is, because there is, again, in the Christian tradition now, there are many who feel this, in this day we live in 1985, that this is a time of a qualitative transformation, or a qualitative... Is there that sense within the Islamic tradition that these are times of qualitative transformation, or a major change in a
when he comes, he will introduce a major change, definitely.
Do you think we live in these times now? I mean, in a historical sense, of
maybe, yes,
some qualitative transformation?
Some of the signs of his reappearance are...
The signs of his reappearance are many? What would be some of the signs of his reappearance, if I may?
Corruption, spread of corruption all over the world.
The spread of corruption and the establishment of an evil empire, or a sense of evil.
Evil is all over the world. We have it now.
Yeah, right.
And well, I'm not quite well versed in all those signs, or historical signs of his reappearance, but people say that the cities would be very near to each other. Time would be very short. These things were not explicable in those days, because they, or when you speak in one city, you can be heard in another. Or
it's quite literally true now.
Very literally true, yes.
Yeah.
And so many other signs.
Yeah, I was just wondering if we get an epistemological sense of the time in which we find ourselves, whether we live in a time of qualitative transformation in the human condition, a time of liberation, at the same time when, for the first time, science and technology, Western or otherwise, has apparently delivered us to the point where we can destroy the human species from the... You know, it might be you understand that we might be at a time of... Do you sense, or is it your sense that we do live at a time of qualitative transformation?
I think we do live in a time of qualitative transformation, but we also have the strong faith in Islam, and we think that we have to maintain our spiritual aspect.
Yes.
And that is why that this qualitative transformation does not bother us. Because in this transformation, what is very badly missing, and what is going to be more badly missing, is the spiritual aspect of life. Today I was hearing on the radio that a satanic sect is, making its own propaganda, and they have to sacrifice a few people for the sake of Satan. You see, it's funny. Some people worship Satan in this part of the world. And all the satanic things which come out of this context, cultural context, are very dangerous. All sorts of corruption, all sorts of mischief, all sorts of deviation from the main moral streams.
Yeah, that we live in
are spread all over the world. I mean, you have lesbians, you have gays, you have... Everything is so legalized.
Yes, right.
You find a new label for it and justify it.
So Sodom and Gomorrah, in a certain sense, from the biblical sense, in that kind of time in which we find ourselves. And that's the time that we've been prophesied that there was the need of a spiritual,
what
awakening?
We have to do is to preserve our spiritual values and our spiritual dimensions. So if whatever corruption is around the world, since we are living according to the standards of Islam, thanks God, so it does not bother us really. And this is a very difficult choice for our people, which we have made, and which is somehow inconsistent with the choices or with the cultural context which is around us, and therefore people do not appreciate, and they feel so inimical and probably antagonistic. I think we have a lot to offer to the rest of the world in terms of tranquility, in terms of education, in terms of healthy conduct of individuals. In Iran, we have a very, very healthy society. We do not have drinking, we don't have gambling.
That's a long tradition. I mean, that's basic to the Islamic tradition.
It's a basic tradition of Islam, which has been revived after the revolution, and it is so healthy. It is so sane and happy and prosperous. Everybody is working. Everybody is enjoying. Everybody is learning. Everybody is reading. But in here, time is spent on a lot of unnecessary things.
Yeah.
I think people are somehow accustomed to, amusements and to entertainments, which probably, if they had the choice, they would not have chosen.
If they had a richer spiritual thing that they could draw upon.
It is the media is conditioning everybody and is imposing a stereotype on everybody.
Yes, right.
And people do not have much chance, let's say, choice to participate and to be creative. If they want to be creative, they have to be creative within the framework which is made available to them.
Yeah, and that
all over the country you have the same shoes, you have the same food, you have the same music, you have the same dance, you have the same. Everything is the same. I mean, the variety and is somehow sacrificed.
Do you think that let's say the difficulties that exist, the materialism, the materialistic attitude of the people, let's say in the United States or in the West in general, that it's overly materialistic and lost its moralist rootings or the rootings of its tradition? Do you think? I mean, I just wonder generally.
Well, I think the materialistic aspect of the Western civilization, particularly when it is absolutely one-dimensional, purely materialistic, devoid of moral and spiritual aspect.
Do you tend to see the United States
that's
in
what
those
we
terms?
see.
You do
guess
see
so.
that, right?
Yes.
Right.
Of course, after the revolution, there is also a kind of response from the church, because the Christian fathers are also feeling more responsible and they are acting better. And I think there is a very positive response on the part of Christianity and the Christian world as a whole. They try to be more religious when they realize that one religion can play a very active role in administration, in politics, in various facets of life. So they have decided to go back and to revive their interest and their commitment to Christianity.
But there are many signs that
but
the
there are
traditional
still
commitments to the
many
religious
signs of negligence toward religion, spiritual life.
Here in the
United States and in the West in general.
And in general, let's say from the standpoint of Iran, again, seeing the world outside of itself and in its sense of spirituality and the commitment to spiritual values and so forth, tends to see the United States, in a very real sense, as representing, in a governmental sense, a great deal of the evil that threatens the world.
That is
very
true.
Is that true? Maybe you could spell out. That
is very true. Regrettably, the United States is the most dominant power in many parts of the world, and this domination is for the sake of certain material interests, and these material interests are here under the disposal of very secular, spiritual, unspiritual values, and you have all sorts of. Well, I don't know to what extent my audience would be happy if I criticize them on their, certain ways of entertainment and dancing and drinking and womanizing, and we hear. It's a very amazing situation. You just follow the TV, and in the middle of a very let's say, a program of music, let's say. All of a sudden, a piece of news comes and that somebody was killed in that street, and another one is killed in another street, and then the music goes on again. See, it's a very strange society. Western mode of life in general is very strange.
And that mode of life, and that Western mode of life,
is
and
not
the cultural
highly
influence,
appreciated.
and the cultural influence that it's had, and political influence that it's had on the world,
particularly on the Islamic
world. From your view,
yes,
overly, it was one of the reasons that you felt such a reation to the United States, and have felt such a reaction in the United States in the revolutionary development.
Still we make a distinction between Western civilization, Western materialism, which is unhealthy, and the United States domination, which is something else. The United States domination is not simply a cultural domination. It is a political, a military, an economic, more so. Economic.
It's a hegemony.
Yes, it's a hegemony. And we think that those countries, like mine, which wish to be independent, they are in trouble, regrettably, because we have to either be in good terms somehow submissive to the United States, or we are the target of criticism and attacks and all sorts of let's say, hegemony.
And in insensitive kind of misappreciation on the part of the United States, a colonialistic kind of attitude, or neocolonialistic on the part of the United States. And it was that influence that was felt at the time of the Revolution in the sense of developing the dialectic with the United States.
I think the dialectic with the United States is very simple. During the past 25 years, the United States has been the dominant power behind all those governments which were ruling Iran without any base to legitimacy, any claim to legitimacy. We think that these regimes were more or less American puppets, and we did not have any opportunity to exercise any independence, and we did not enjoy sovereignty. We did not have the opportunity to, exercise the cultural, the political, and the economic rights which every nation is supposed to have, at least according to the Charter of the United Nations.
You felt that the Shah was a puppet of the United States?
We don't think. I think the United States knows that very well, because they brought him back after he ran away from Iran about at the time of Mossadegh. And the United States was responsible for many of the bad things, I think, that the Shah brought to our country. The United States was behind the recognition of Israel by the regime of the Shah. The United States was...
But you're an implacable foe of.
Yes.
Okay, we want to talk about that.
The domination of the natural resources, economic resources of the country by certain foreign countries, somehow related to the United States, was something that we never liked. And
imperialism.
We have to blame, imperialism. We have to blame the United States for that. But more than that, the United States was so stubborn in its support for the Shah, which we resent and we never forgive, because the Shah was killing our innocent people in the streets. Our revolution, you may or may not remember, I don't know, was a very peaceful revolution. It was very powerful, but it was peaceful. Peaceful in the sense that we did not took arms against the regime. We did not have a coup d'etat-like program. We all together, by we I mean 35 million people of Iran, participated in a total strike.
You had
against
cassettes.
The regime.
You had audio cassettes.
We had the entire system of the society in our control, guided by Imam Khomeini, and this deadlock that the Shah was facing was so comprehensive that he had no room for maneuvering. And it is, according to the book which is written by your own scholars, Gary Sick recently produced a very good volume in this line.
Thank you.
Your own sources show that the United States was very stubborn in its support for the Shah, and it did not miss any chance to do something in order to preserve the regime of the Shah. And after the collapse of the regime, they decided to replace a so-called democracy, a sort of republic of some sort, again headed by the United States, supported by the United States, and they were trying to create a sort of alliance between Bakhtiar, which was their puppet, their puppet, and the army. And the military, fortunately, was intelligent enough not to fall to a trap from which it has already saved itself, after the Shah departed from Iran. And even after the revolution, when the United States became the paradise of counter-revolutionaries, not only the families of the Shah who have stolen a great amount of the property of the people are living in the United States and very happily. The son is coming and going, and the wife of the Shah is still here enjoying its life. But the property of the family belongs to the people of Iran, because everybody knows that the father of the Shah was an ordinary officer and did not leave anything behind for his son. So his son must have had his legal salary, which is quite known according to the constitution and according to the bank records. So whatever they have brought to this country, the shares in the companies and the real estates and the cash, belongs to the people of Iran. Now, is the government of the United States prepared to restore justice and bring that property back to us, as it is already committed itself to doing? So, according to the Algiers agreement, but they have never made any attempt to do that. We think that the also, apart from hosting the counter-revolutionary elements, the media has been very inimical toward the Islamic Republic of Iran, and they have not missed any chance to either to support any counter-revolutionary. By counter-revolutionary, I do not mean Iranian elements. Anything which is against our revolution. They have been always supportive of that, and they have been always misrepresenting our society. They have been treating the society in a very humiliating, unfair way. They have disseminated a great amount of wrong information to the American public. They do not know that a great number of Americans who are married to Iranian ladies or gentlemen are living in Iran very happily, and they just do not want to come back to the United States. They don't know that how much advancement we have made during the past 5-6 years in terms of culture, in terms of painting, in terms of music, in terms of writing, in terms of science, in terms of technology, in terms of development particularly. We have enough to feed, let's say, Department of Local Development or Regional Development up to the level of Ph.D. We have all the literature needed for that, because we started our own development from the scratch, and we made use of the local technology and local expertise, and we developed the society very, very rapidly.
And you have a sense of camaraderie, and we have a sense of nationhood among the people that are there, very strong,
yes,
based on the leadership of Ayatollah Khomeini,
based on Islam. And as soon as we say Islam, then the leadership is included.
Right. And it's you have a tradition of the princes, of the secular power, and then you have the priests that have a place.
We don't have a secular power any longer.
No, you don't any longer. But I mean, historically, there was a
secular power. No, that was not really characteristic of only Iran. With the coming of the nation-state concept, almost all the Islamic, let's say, fragments of Islamic society,
church-state question,
yes, adopted a sort of secular system of government, which pays some lip service to Islam, and even some people in the court might even pray and fast. But the doctrine, the political doctrine, in almost all these Islamic societies or countries, they are all secular. They are, mimicking the Western models of politics. But in Iran, we have a purely Islamic administration.
In that sense, then, you feel that you're strong,
very happy,
fundamentally adhering to the precepts of Islam
to the best
sense
of our
that
ability.
It has in terms of giving guidance to human condition and human activity and that kind of thing.
That is the best. In the best of our ability, we try to do that.
I mean, of course, we're all aware of the fact that we had bad feelings between Iran and the United States at the time of the holding of hostages there in Tehran and so forth. And do you think that
you have that feeling?
The sense of that is a reason that there might have been misunderstanding of the contemporary situation on the part of the Americans toward Iran? There's a lingering sense of embarrassment or chagrin or anger?
So far as the public opinion in the United States is concerned, you are right. From the hostage crisis, which we don't call it hostage crisis. We don't call them hostages. We call them detainees.
You
call them hostages.
Detainee crisis, right? Or the political crisis.
Yes, political crisis. The crisis in the embassy sometimes. Then from there, the American public has this sort of grievance and anger against us, thanks to the media. But the administration...
Thanks to the media, not to the inherent situation itself?
No, because the inherent situation has a great amount of humanitarian aspects in it. The way these detainees were treated is never, properly demonstrated to the public. We offered, except that for the fact that they were detainees.
Yes, right.
They were best treated.
All right.
Best treated according to any standard.
No, but that in and of itself is a...
But so they themselves know that we did not have anything against them. We did not take any step against their persons or against any American person.
No.
It was the only possible way to break down the machinery which was very active inside American embassy and just bring it to a standstill. And to make sure that the revolution was later on safe and sound. Because the number of coups d'etats the Americans were trying to bring about, and the number of plots and political problems that they created for us, and were creating for us, and still are trying to create for us, were too many. And we thought that insofar as the embassy was active and the American diplomats are collecting information and maintaining their contacts with here and there in Kurdistan, in the north of Iran, in Azerbaijan, in everywhere, we could not be of any degree of security. And this was very important to note, that it was a public understanding. It was not a governmental understanding. The government was just an ordinary provisional government. It was the people who rushed to the embassy. And when they say some groups of students, it is not fair, because the revolutionary engine of the society at that time was the students of the universities and lost the final years of the secondary education. This was due to the fact that only under the university conditions people could talk together.
I see,
and
right,
establish relations. You could not lead a revolution in an office, in the street, in a political party established by the Shah.
Because it was too much pressure.
The only place where, under the suffocating pressure of SAWAK, the secret system, secret police, anybody could talk together was the university atmosphere.
Things often come out of the university.
Yes, the student could have some privacy with his teacher if he trusted him. And so the students also had some room for maneuvering, for coming together, organizing, and also spreading the religious literature around. So the central activity was really, at least one very important central activity, was the university atmosphere.
And it was a way for a weaker nation, if that's the true, I mean, in a certain sense, in the superpower sense of the sense of the word and so forth, for a weaker nation to deal with a more powerful adversary in a very real sense. Do you think it is? And I wonder if there are any lessons now. We're living now in the time of the situations in terms of Lebanon and the recent activity on the part of young men who take airplanes and take hostages and so forth.
More or less a lesson, but it is not a lesson. It cannot be exploited as a lesson in order to be later on used as a preventive measure for revolutionary development in the world. The awakening which has come to the young generation in the entire Islamic world.
The young generation?
The young generation is unique, and they have come to this understanding that neither capitalism nor communism is going to help the Islamic world at all. As a matter of fact, we believe that it is not going to help any part of the world. We don't think that Afghanistan is going to achieve prosperity and happiness. We do not think that the let's say, capitalistic part of the world is going to achieve happiness. You don't have it in Egypt, you don't have it in Zaire, you don't have it in any of these affiliates with the West. And we think that happiness comes to mankind when mankind is following a way of life prescribed for mankind by God, who has created both mankind and the rest of nature. And that is the best.
Would that be an Islamic world? Would that be an Islamic world?
We look forward to see that.
We look forward to seeing an Islamic world, or living in precepts with a religious precept that you have a
you see, when people in the West realize that Islam is something healthy and good, they will follow it. They will prescribe. They will subscribe to it without any hesitation.
But there is among the young men, as you say, in the Islamic world, a sense of revolutionary fervor and a recognition of the fact of the United States, in a very real sense, as representing the major problem that has to be dealt with if peace is to be found, rather than trying to look at the specific instances of hijacking and so forth are symptomatic of a deeper kind of problem that has to be addressed and understood.
But the explanation is simpler, you see. The explanation is that, let's go to the Islamic world and see how many countries are dominated by the United States, or follow the Western, let's say, political ways of doing things. Let's go to the Arab world. You have one or two countries which are accused of being pro-Soviet. The rest of them are pro-American. You have in the North Africa, you have a good number of pro-American countries. You have Egypt, and you know the maneuvers, and you know where your AWACSs are. You know where your forces can easily maneuver.
Yeah.
You know by the association and assistance of which countries your forces easily go to the Persian Gulf. You know that even in the Far East we have Islamic countries, and you know whether they are pro-communist or pro-American. It's quite known. Therefore, it is the United States which is predominantly playing the destiny of the Muslim world in his own hand.
And is it from your view the carte blanche, as you see it, association with the state of Israel that's a major problem in terms of the United States policy that you would see
is a very dangerous part of the issue, because the state of Israel is an artificial, baseless entity which is imposed upon Palestine simply because of the support of the United States. It is a state which is living on charity coming from the United States. I think the amount of money which the United States gives to Israel every year, you know, if you count it per capita, you will see that it is definitely more than the per capita income of many of these Muslim countries around us. Even this year, you have given more than $1,000 per individual to Israel. Now go to Yemen. What is the per capita income of that country? Go to Egypt. What is the per capita? Go to Sudan.
Can you see a just world order from your perspective as we begin to think, even idealistically, or days of judgment,
why not?
that has a state of Israel existent as it is now,
I think
in keeping with the Judaic tradition also, which lives in a time of fulfilling of its ancient
prophecy? I think that state will not
prophecy.
exist from our point of view.
You think it cannot exist?
It will not exist, definitely, and it cannot exist because it is the main source of all local problems that we have. And I don't think that it is a very vital base for the legitimate interest of the United States in the region. If the United States wants to have access to the market of the Muslim world, then it is more or less the superiority of the Western technology which makes it possible. If people are, for instance, buying Chevrolet or Mercedes-Benz, it is not because they like the United States. It is because Benz is better than Moskvich or the car coming from the Soviet Union. And so far as this superiority is maintained, then the market, when those people who wish to buy something, they are intelligent people, and they choose always the better one, which comes from the West. So the market will, to some extent, remain a Western market, and the oil, which they have to sell anyway, they will sell it according to the normal, fair price of the time, and to their customers. And the customer can be anybody, can be England, can be France, can be United States. There is no particular, premeditated plan as to not to sell oil to the West and sell it only to the East. I mean, that's a very silly idea. But the Zionists have inculcated in the American public the concept that if Israel does not exist, then the whole area will go communist. That is the thing, that is the threat which is wrongly and baselessly created here. And they think that if Israel goes, then the entire Western interest, legitimate interest of the West in the area will come to an end, which is not correct.
But you don't think that there might be a moral commitment in a certain sense that goes back for a long time on the part of the United States to Israel and to the Jewish people and the people in the state of Israel that doesn't relate to the immediate geopolitical possibility of a communist development within the Middle East or something like that, but they have a moral commitment to the people of the Judaic tradition and to Israel.
Oh, they can maintain their model.
That's basic to our
Yes, but this commitment is also holds true of those Judo-Christian people who are inside the United States. Why you create an artificial state for them from the Palestinian resources? Why? Why should Palestine be sacrificed for an artificial entity which is, from our point of view, a terrorist base?
What is the solution, do you think?
The solution is that the Zionists will go, or they will stay, and they will live under the flag of Palestine. And then the rest of the Muslim world will be happy, and they will exercise their Islam, and they will have their normal relations with
Israel would say, and fly under the flag of Palestine.
Of course.
Which would mean what?
Well, we have a group of
those who left Palestine or were evicted from Palestine when the Israel's established
could return. In Palestine. One group is the local Jews, which have been there for years, centuries. They will continue. And those Ashkenazi Jews who are the immigrants, they will go to where they came from. I mean, if they have an English accent, they will go to England or to the United States. If they have a French accent, they will go to France.
You think it was
a
mistake?
They have their property there.
You think it was a mistake in terms of sacred terms, in a certain sense, that
in terms of political terms, in terms of sacred terms, in terms of the interests of the United States, in terms of justice, in every terms, it was a great mistake to create an artificial state.
Do you think that the establishment of the State of Israel in these days, in these final days, when again coming back to that major theme we said of the Messianic tradition, the coming of the second coming of Jesus, the tradition of Messianic tradition within the Islamic tradition, a time of qualitative transformation, a time when the human species is able to obliterate itself for the first time in 3 million years, that we might live in extraordinary times, and that this is the time of the fulfilling of the ancient Jewish prophecy, and that the establishment of Israel in these times is appropriate to biblical perception.
If you wish to say that the State of Israel manifests it is the manifestation of evil in our history, and that, yes, you are right.
What is the
manifestation of evil?
Which is the manifestation of evil?
The so-called State of Israel, the Zionist base.
You see that as the manifestation of evil?
Of evil, absolutely. There is a gentleman who ran away from Israel. He is an Ashkenazi Jew. He married to a Sephardi Jew, and then the racial problems brought him down to a second-grade citizen, and he left, and he lives in Washington. He produced a small article. I don't remember the title. If anybody remembers. If you read that, you will see how the situation is inside that so-called state. It's an awful center of corruption.
I wonder if I could. We're coming down to the close here. I wonder if, from someone who represents the state of Iran, which is based on the book, based on religious precept rather than strictly geopolitical or secular consideration, if we come back to that idea of whether or not you feel that these are extraordinary times, in the sense of fulfilling of prophecy, ancient prophecy, and so forth.
We don't want to theologize
so that there would be
very practical.
Yeah, but
it can be very practical. Why should we theologize things?
Well, just perhaps because that
it
those
does not
are the
explain
time.
anything.
It does not.
No, you cannot explain. You just cannot explain the political events in the Middle East in terms of that we believe in some sort of, the prophecies are coming about.
Well, it might be able to give us
we want freedom. We want independence.
Yes, of course.
We want to decide for our own. And we want our people to be free from domination of both the United States and U.S.A.
And we want that for all people. We want that for all people. Huh?
Yeah, we want that for all people. Why not?
And we may live at a time when that could be the condition for all people in the world, perhaps for the first time.
They may not be, because we have to create the condition. We are human beings, and we create all these conditions by our own hand. Why not?
Yeah, right. Well, what I'm saying is that we might live in a time where, from that perception, as Ayatollah Khomeini or the vision of the Muhammad or the Islamic tradition gives us a view beyond just the immediate political view that we live in so much in a secular sense, that there's a broader context of understanding.
That is very true.
That from that broader context of understanding, we might live at a time of peace and justice that will be reigning upon the world. Do you think we might live in these times?
Yes, of course. We have to struggle for that.
Could we get past then the conception of good and evil in the sense, so that we could see perhaps possibilities that if we're too narrowly caught up within the political context that history has laid upon us, as it were, we can't see the possibilities that the vision allows.
You're right. If we were not caught up in the tense political arguments or realities, probably we would have a more broader perspective, and we would face the situations with more understanding, more tolerance, with more receptivity. For instance, you see the media is now trying slightly to be receptive to the cause of the Shiites in Lebanon. But nevertheless, there is every now and then an attempt to introduce them as terrorists and terrorists and terrorists. You see, this is a sort of emotionalization of the situation in order to take advantage politically. Nobody says, well, what they want, what do they want, why they are doing what they are doing. Or although the issue of 800 of the Shiites who are hijacked, who are detained in Israel, is well now represented, but still they try to undermine it, and they say, well, it's irrelevant. We want our own people, and we are going to get it by force, if not peacefully.
Are you optimistic concerning the human prospect
of course I am.
Generally, and for the prospects for peace in the Middle Eastern part of the world?
Yes, insofar as I believe in God, insofar as I believe in human creativity, in human nature, and in the divine nature of mankind, insofar as I believe that good always
will triumph in the end.
And triumph in the end. Of course, I'm very optimistic. Why not? I'm sure that people will listen to us, sometime, very soon, hopefully, and they will be more appreciative of the cause. They will appreciate the revolution with more sympathy and with more understanding. This is the meaning of life.
Yeah, okay, fine. Well, we wanted to, in a certain sense, have the opportunity to understand better what the perception of the the Iran situation is, because we don't understand it well enough here. And I certainly thank you very much for helping to share some perception of that and the significance that might have toward trying to bring about conditions for peace in that part of the world, in keeping with the best of the sacred traditions of that part of the world. It's a special part of the world, and it's one, again, whose roots go very, very much back to the Persian experience and to the Iranian experience. And we can only just say thank you for all of those traditional values that you've given to us, and to hope that we might be able to find our way through these difficult times.
We hope to.
They are difficult indeed.
They are difficult, but I think some are trying to add to the difficulty.
Yeah.
And which is also very, very sad.
Well,
I think the objectivity is very important. You see, what is probably a very important, a very crucial issue in this context is the shadow of ignorance.
Yeah, I know. Well, we want
just covering this part of the world.
If there's one enemy that we all have,
about the Islamic world, about the revolution, and about the nature of events in the region.
If there's one common enemy that we might all have, it's ignorance. And let's hope that we help to pull back the veil of ignorance a little bit with this interview. It's been a great pleasure talking with you.
You're welcome.
And I'm sorry we've run out of time. We could have gone talking a great deal more. It's been your pleasure to have the perceptions of Dr. Rajaie Khorassani, the ambassador and permanent representative of the Islamic State Republic of Iran here at the United Nations. Happy to have been able to bring you those perceptions, and we invite you here on Conversations to tune in again next week. We'll be coming back next week, so please come back. And once again, Ambassador Rajaie, thank you very, very much indeed for everything.
Thank you very much. I think we did not have a chance to pay.
قهر ملت‌های دربند است حبل المتین توده‌های آرزومند است الله اکبر خمینی رهبر الله اکبر خمینی رهبر دشمن بداند ما موج خروشانی بازو به بازو صف به صف ما آهنین چنگیم سنگر به سنگر جان به کف آماده جنگیم